The glass in my hand wasn't supposed to taste like that. It was a sharp, metallic bitterness, the kind that freezes you before it even reaches your stomach. And as I set it down on the polished conference table, I caught the tiny smirk spreading across the face of the woman sitting opposite me. She knew exactly what she had done. My vision didn't blur. I didn't faint. But I felt something coil in my gut, not poison, not danger, but the cold realization that this moment, this exact second, was the start of her final move against me. Before that sip, she'd been sabotaging me quietly. But now? Now she was bold enough to lock eyes with me as she slid the knife in. Have you ever trusted someone so deeply, only to realize they were dismantling your life piece by piece? If you've ever been underestimated, erased, or betrayed, hit that like button, because this story, this one right here, is for you. And if anything in this hits home, drop your own story in the comments. I read every single one. My name is Damon Hale. And this is the story of how I destroyed the most manipulative executive I ever worked under, using nothing but calm observation, silent strategy, and a truth she never expected me to uncover. But to explain how I got here, staring across a boardroom table at a woman who wanted me gone, we need to rewind. Not to the drink. Not to the betrayal. But to the quiet life I had before she stepped into my world. Intro, who I am. I'm 36 years old. A systems architect. I live in the small coastal city of Brindleport, the kind of place where the air always smells like saltwater and steel, because half the city works near the shipyards. I'm not dramatic. I'm not loud. I'm not someone who storms into rooms with big speeches and big energy. I'm the opposite. I watch people. Quietly. I notice patterns. I remember details. My dad used to call me a silent lighthouse, always awake, always observing, always catching things long before they hit shore. It's helped me in every job I've ever had. And it's also why people mistake me for weak, passive, or easy to push around. But trust me, the people who think that are always the ones who regret it later. I've spent 14 years in tech, mostly in infrastructure and long-term system design. I'm the guy who builds the frameworks other people eventually praise. I don't mind staying in the background, I actually prefer it. But about a year ago, I was hired at a mid-sized software firm called Northlane Innovations. Not a giant corporation, not a startup, something in between. The kind of place where one powerful executive can shape the entire culture. Which brings me to her. The woman who turned my quiet life into a maze of manipulation. The woman who smiled at me as I tasted that metallic bitterness. The woman who underestimated who I really was. Her name was Marla Vexley. And God, she was good at pretending to be good. If you saw Marla Vexley for the first time, you would never guess what she was capable of. She wasn't loud. She wasn't cruel in an obvious way. She wasn't the kind of executive who barked orders or slammed doors. No, her power came from subtlety. Marla was the Chief Strategy Officer at Northlane Innovations. Elegant. Precise. Always dressed like she was heading to a silent auction where only the elite were invited. She spoke with a soft voice that somehow carried through any room. And she had mastered the art of social camouflage. Around the board, she was insightful. Around employees, she was warm. Around investors, she was visionary. But around people she wanted to destroy? She became something else entirely. The first week I started, she approached me with that silk-smooth smile. Damon, right? I've heard good things. I'm sure you'll fit in, if you know how to integrate properly. At the time, I thought she was talking about the tech department. I didn't know she was warning me. Those words, if you know how to integrate properly, were a threat wrapped in courtesy. What she really meant was, stay in your place. Don't get in my way. Don't be too good. Don't be noticed. Because people like Marla need one thing above all: control. And apparently, quiet, observant people like me are her worst nightmare. Not because we fight, but because we see. For the first few weeks, I kept my head down. I showed up early, worked late, didn't socialize much. It's just who I am. But even in silence, you can hear things. Manipulation 1, the disappearing credit. The first time it happened, it was small. I had designed an internal workflow system that cut processing times by 40%. It wasn't flashy, but it was effective. My manager was thrilled. Marla scheduled a showcase meeting with the board. I should have taken that as the first red flag. In the meeting, she pulled up my presentation slides, except they weren't mine anymore. My name was removed. My notes were rewritten. My diagrams were simplified to the point of looking amateurish. She introduced the project by saying, I drafted this framework with Damon's technical assistance. Technical assistance. I had built the whole thing from scratch, alone, and she knew that. I glanced at her across the table. She didn't look back. She just kept talking as if rewriting history was part of her job description. And everyone ate it up. They nodded. Smiled. Praised her. I thought, okay. That's annoying. Maybe it's a one-time thing. I wish it had been. Manipulation 2, the whisper campaign. It started with confusion. People I barely knew in other departments began asking me strange, pointed questions. Hey, Damon, everything okay at home? You seem distracted. Heard you've been missing deadlines. Need help? Just checking in, I know you're under a lot of pressure with everything. Everything? What everything? I wasn't missing deadlines. I wasn't stressed. I wasn't distracted. But someone was spreading a narrative that I was. And that someone was careful. Strategic. Someone who understood that reputations don't collapse in a day, they crumble slowly, grain by grain. I'd later discover exactly how she orchestrated it. But at the time, all I had was intuition and growing unease. Manipulation 3, the public praise, private cuts. In meetings, she praised me. Damon has such potential. He's really coming along. He just needs a little more structure and guidance. But in private? She twisted every interaction. She'd call me into her office and say things like, "You're not as fast as I expected. You don't want people thinking you're difficult, do you? You should let me review your work before you present anything. You know, just in case you misunderstand something." Every word was a cut delivered with a soft voice. Gaslighting disguised as guidance. She wanted dependency. She wanted control. She wanted to reshape my image into something fragile and unreliable, while smiling to my face. And I kept letting it slide because quiet people like me were conditioned to endure. But endurance turns into resentment. And resentment turns into clarity. Especially when the biggest attack is still waiting. Manipulation 4, the setup. It was a rainy Tuesday morning. I remember that because the whole office smelled like wet coats and old coffee. I walked into a meeting room and found Marla with two senior managers. She looked up with faux surprise. Damon. Perfect timing. We were just talking about the system outages last night. System outages? I hadn't even heard about them. She gestured too casually toward a folder on the table, already open, already positioned right where she wanted it. Your access logs are unusual. Unusual. That's corporate code for we're about to blame you for something big. The logs showed activity under my username at 2:13 a.m. I was asleep at 2:13 a.m. It was the first time I felt a genuine chill run up my spine. Someone had used my credentials. Someone who wanted to tie a catastrophic system failure directly to me. And in that moment, I realized something terrifying. Marla wasn't just trying to discredit me. She was building a case to eliminate me. Professionally. Reputationally. Maybe even legally. And I knew, with absolute clarity, that this was no longer a string of small manipulations. This was a coordinated attack. A calculated takedown. And I was the target. But what she didn't know was that quiet people don't stay quiet forever. We observe. We analyze. We wait for the right moment. And mine was coming. The big turning point, the night everything snapped. The night everything changed didn't start with drama. It started with silence. I had stayed late at the office, long after most people left. I wasn't working, not really. I was sitting at my desk, staring at the access log report Marla had conveniently discovered. 2:13 a.m. My username. A full admin override. A system deletion request that lined up perfectly with the midnight outage. If I hadn't known myself, I might have believed it too. That was the level of detail she operated with. But something about it bothered me, deeply. People like Marla don't get their hands dirty. They use others as tools. So how had she pulled this off? Who had access to my credentials? What was her endgame? It wasn't until I opened my email, something I'd done a million times, that I noticed something tiny. A password reset notification. Not from that day. From 6 weeks earlier. A password reset I did not initiate. My heart sank so hard it felt like it hit the floor. She had 6 weeks of potential access. 6 weeks of planting evidence. 6 weeks of crafting the perfect downfall. But the real turning point wasn't digital. It was human. Because as I sat there trying to figure out how far this went, the lights in the corridor flickered. Footsteps echoed. A shadow moved just outside the glass walls of the office. Someone was here. And when the figure stepped into view, holding a folder tucked under one arm, I felt my pulse stop for a moment. It was Henry, the facilities supervisor. A quiet, older guy. Always polite. Always observant, maybe even more than I was. He looked at me through the glass, glanced around, then stepped inside and softly closed the door. You shouldn't be here alone right now. His voice had weight. The kind people get when they've seen too much. I blinked. Why? Henry sighed, took the folder off his arm, and set it on my desk. Inside were printed camera stills. Time-stamped. Clear. Damning. Not of me. Of Marla. Using her phone to take pictures of login screens on various computers. Entering passwords. Photographing access codes. Standing in places she shouldn't have had clearance for. And then he pushed one more picture toward me, the last one in his stack. It was of her standing at my desk. At 2:12 a.m. 1 minute before the system outage. My throat went dry. Why are you showing me this? He hesitated, then said. Because she told the board to suspend me last week. Said I tampered with confidential footage. I didn't. I just didn't delete what she asked. My chest tightened. She threatened you? He gave a humorless smile. Son, she's threatened half this building. Most people just don't realize it until it's too late. With that, he left the photos, told me he was rooting for me, and slipped out the door as quietly as he'd come. That night wasn't the end of my problems. It was the beginning of my awakening. I wasn't paranoid. I wasn't imagining it. I wasn't blowing things out of proportion. She really was orchestrating my collapse. And now I had evidence, raw, unfiltered, undeniable. But evidence means nothing without strategy. So I took a deep breath, packed the folder into my backpack, and made a choice I'd never made before in my life. I was done being passive. From that night forward, everything I did became deliberate. Calm. Silent. Strategic. The same way she had hunted me. I was going to hunt the truth. Silent investigation phase, becoming the ghost she couldn't see. The next 2 weeks were the most controlled I've ever been. No anger. No confrontation. No emotional reactions. I went to work on time. Smiled politely. Did my job. Acted completely unaware. Meanwhile, I was building a case strong enough to snap her mask in half. Here's how. Step 1. The digital forensics trail. I started by requesting a copy of all access logs for the past 3 months. Marla approved this instantly, which was suspicious. A controlling person never approves anything instantly. I realized why later. She had already deleted the ones she thought mattered. But she forgot something critical. Servers create hidden shadow logs, system-level backups she didn't know existed. Using administrative tools she wasn't aware I had access to, I restored old login timestamps, device IDs, physical badge entry logs, server room entry records, and internal Wi-Fi ID pings. 2 hours of cross-referencing revealed what she never expected anyone to find. Her tablet had connected to my workstation several times in the middle of the night. Not once. Not twice. But 9 times. Every unusual activity in my name lined up perfectly with times she entered the building, badge swipes she claimed she never made, and outages that crippled our system. She wasn't sloppy. But she wasn't as invisible as she believed. Quiet people learn patterns. And I had learned hers. Step 2. The human evidence. I needed more than tech logs. I needed witnesses. So I started talking to people, quietly. The interns told me she often had them rewrite data reports, removing names she didn't like. The project coordinator admitted Marla instructed her to delay my emails to create the appearance of slow communication. 2 software engineers privately revealed she'd asked them if they felt safe working with me, despite no incidents. Henry, bless the man, handed me yet another piece, a backup drive with 2 months of camera footage she had ordered him to erase. He didn't erase it. He saved it. And when I watched it at home, frame by frame, I saw her snooping through desks, photographing screens, copying access keys, entering the server room at night, pulling files from IT storage, meeting with a man who wasn't an employee, handing him a sealed envelope. This wasn't corporate politics. This was premeditated sabotage. And one person alone doesn't do all this unless there's something bigger behind it. But that part of the story comes later. Step 3. My own trap. She loved using my credentials. So I let her. I purposely changed my password in the middle of the day while sitting near the glass wall of the common area. She saw me typing. 2 days later, guess what? A login attempt occurred using the old password. Meaning, she had been trying to access my account again. She didn't know I had changed the password. She didn't realize failed attempts logged the device ID. Now I had proof she tried to enter my account even after framing me. This is where most people would have marched into HR with receipts. But I wasn't most people. Not anymore. I needed timing. I needed witnesses. I needed a room full of the right people. And I needed her to believe I was losing. So I kept my head down. Let her think I was crumbling. Let her think she had won. And the whole time, I was building a quiet storm right under her nose. The calm before the reveal. The night before everything came crashing down, I spread out all the evidence on my living room floor. Digital logs. CCTV stills. Interview notes. Backup drives. Email metadata. Badge swipe inconsistencies. Her meeting with the unknown man. And her pattern of framing me. I looked at it all and whispered to myself. Tomorrow, she learns who she's been underestimating. But here's the twist. I wasn't going to expose her alone. I was going to expose her in the one place she worshipped. The quarterly executive review. A room full of board members. Investors. Department heads. Her entire audience. Her kingdom. She built her throne on lies. Tomorrow, I was going to pull the foundation out from under her, silently. Just as she had tried to do to me. Truth reveal, executive review meeting. The room was immaculate, the kind of space designed to impress investors and intimidate employees. Marble floors. Floor-to-ceiling windows. A polished table that could seat 20 people. And at the head of the table sat Marla, radiating calm authority. The kind of calm that fools everyone into thinking she's untouchable. I walked in, briefcase in hand, acting like I belonged there, like nothing had happened. Marla's eyes flicked toward me, measuring, testing, smirking. Damon, she said sweetly. Glad you could join us. We were just reviewing the past quarter. Her voice was velvet, but I felt the knives hidden in each syllable. This was her stage, and she'd practiced the lines 100 times. I smiled. Polite. Neutral. Calm. And then I laid my briefcase on the table and opened it. Inside, files, printed logs, CCTV stills, email chains, and every single piece of evidence I'd collected. Before we start, I said, my voice steady, I think it's important to clarify a few things about the system outages last month. Her smirk faltered, the tiniest fraction, imperceptible to anyone but me. She had no idea. I started methodically. The login timestamps, showing Marla's device entering my accounts at 2:12, 2:13, 2:14 a.m. The badge swipe inconsistencies proving she was in restricted areas at unauthorized times. The CCTV footage showing her photographing my computer screens and copying confidential documents. Testimonies from interns, engineers, and the facility's supervisor confirming her manipulations. Every piece lined up perfectly. Every accusation made against me, I continued, was manufactured. Every anomaly she reported was either fabricated or orchestrated. And the person responsible is not me, it's Marla. A ripple ran through the room. Eyes widened. Heads turned. A few gasps. And Marla? She blinked. Paused. Her mask cracked for the first time in public. This isn't possible," she stammered. I didn't flinch. "It's very possible," I said. "And the evidence is right here. I recommend a review by the board before any further action." She swallowed hard, realizing her empire of control had collapsed in front of the people she valued most, the board, the investors, her peers. The silent cracks. The weeks after the meeting were surreal. Marla didn't explode. She didn't rage. She didn't try to sue me. She disappeared. Slowly. The control she had over people evaporated because the people she manipulated saw the truth. The interns no longer deferred to her. The engineers no longer feared her instructions. The board stopped relying on her for strategic decisions. Investors became wary of her recommendations. Her reputation, built meticulously over years, crumbled silently. Meanwhile, I didn't celebrate. I didn't gloat. I simply kept working, building my own projects, earning trust, and strengthening relationships. The most satisfying part? Watching her lose control without me lifting a hand. The power of quiet evidence. The power of observing, waiting, and acting when the time was right. Consequences, her slow fall. Marla's influence dwindled. She was removed from key projects. Board members began second-guessing her proposals. She lost credibility among her peers. Interns and employees who once feared her now walked past her with calm indifference. She didn't explode in a fiery, dramatic confrontation. She just shrank. And the beauty of it? Everyone saw it. Justice isn't always about dramatic revenge. Sometimes it's about letting someone crumble quietly under the weight of their own manipulations while you remain composed, dignified, and unshakable. Peaceful ending, my new life. After everything settled, I moved to a smaller apartment overlooking the harbor. The city lights reflected on the water, calm and steady, and I felt a peace I hadn't known in months. I focused on work I loved, joined a small tech mentorship program for underprivileged students, and reconnected with friends I'd neglected during the stress. No celebrations. No fireworks. Just calm mornings, clear nights, and quiet satisfaction. I wasn't defined by what Marla tried to do to me. I was defined by how I responded. By the dignity I maintained. By the justice I earned without drama. And sometimes, when I walked past Northlane Innovations on my way to the harbor, I saw her in the window, smaller than she once seemed. And I smiled. Because that's revenge done right. Message to the audience. If you've ever been underestimated, erased, or betrayed, this story is for you. You don't always need to yell. You don't need fireworks, chaos, or blood. Sometimes the smartest revenge is calm, strategic, and dignified. Collect your evidence. Observe carefully. Build your case. And wait for the right moment. The world has a way of exposing manipulators when you stay patient and composed. Share your own story in the comments. I want to hear about the quiet victories you've claimed, the manipulations you've seen, and the dignity you've preserved. And if this story inspired you, hit that like button, subscribe, and stay tuned for more tales of quiet power, justice, and reclaiming your life on your own terms. Epilogue, Healing and Reflection. It took months to truly feel the weight lift from my shoulders. Not just the stress, the paranoia, or the injustice, but the constant mental calculation, the ever-present tension of wondering if Marla would strike again. I began waking up without the pit in my stomach. My mornings became mine again. Coffee by the harbor. Watching the waves reflect the sunrise. Breathing without thinking about logs, credentials, or meetings. In those moments of calm, I realized something crucial: revenge isn't about satisfaction alone. It's about reclaiming yourself. Every small smile from someone I mentored, every acknowledgement of my work by people who now genuinely respected me, every quiet day where I wasn't looking over my shoulder, these were the real victories. What I learned about people. Marla taught me more about human nature than any book ever could. Manipulators thrive on perception. If you let them shape reality without challenge, they will. Patience is a weapon. A manipulator moves fast because they want immediate control. The quiet can wait, and when the timing is right, the reveal is devastating. Calm is more powerful than anger. She underestimated me because I didn't explode. My composure became my shield and my sword. Evidence is invincible. No lies survive thorough documentation and careful observation. Reflections on quiet power. People often think revenge requires noise, chaos, or theatrics. It doesn't. True quiet power is subtle, methodical, and invisible until it strikes. I watched her influence shrink like a tide retreating. I didn't need to confront her loudly. I didn't need to prove myself to everyone in the office. I only needed the truth, collected, organized, and undeniable. And when the world saw her for what she truly was, it wasn't me who celebrated. I didn't need to. Justice unfolded quietly, perfectly, without my interference. My life now. Now, my days are mine. I mentor young engineers and help them navigate not just technical problems, but office politics. I spend more time with my friends and family, building relationships that aren't conditional. I write occasionally, journaling my experiences, not for fame, not for attention, but to remind myself of how far I've come. Most importantly, I have peace. Not the kind of peace that comes from defeating someone. The kind of peace that comes from knowing you never let anyone define your worth, manipulate your path, or erase your achievements. And yes, sometimes, late at night, I smile quietly thinking about Marla, watching her scramble, realizing she lost without ever touching me. That's satisfaction enough. Final message to the audience. If you've ever been underestimated, erased, or betrayed, remember this. You don't need fireworks to reclaim your life. You don't need chaos to prove your worth. You need patience, observation, and the courage to stand quietly while the truth unfolds. Build your foundation. Collect your evidence. Protect your dignity. And when the time is right, let the world see the truth, not in a scream, but in a silent, undeniable victory. Share your own story in the comments. Tell me how you've handled quiet battles, manipulations, or betrayals. Every experience is valuable. And if you haven't already, hit like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more stories of quiet power, justice, and the subtle yet overwhelming strength of reclaiming your life on your own terms. Remember, the most powerful victories are the ones nobody sees coming.